Alright, so you know why the nuclear is a disaster waiting to happen, especially where you need food. And especially on earthquakes and volcanic activity. So, not a good idea. And it's a threat to our people here, and also to the sea life and to the water. Okay, so that would fall under genocide, and you saw what happened to Japan. And Africa's over there. You bomb the shit out of them, and you're sitting there. South Africa's who's funding nuclear. Okay, number one complaint. You moved in there and started becoming racist. You have a lot of tribes in there. On average, they live off of like $2 a day. Okay, and so you need drought resistant foods for certain regions there. And we know all about that because that's what we grow, in really high deserts and stuff. So, I mean, it can be done. Also, medicine, so viruses, we're having outbreaks here too. Bacteria's coming up off the Gulf, parasites, um, and freaking anthrax is a thing around here. You need hydrogen peroxide for it. There's all sorts of little things, and I think like um there's a lot to it. I don't want to dive into it, but I talked to Africa about medicine because they're worried about vaccines too. And so some of us have really old blood types and we don't have the same autoimmune systems. So one doesn't treat all. And we're building our own immunity while we're also being attacked, and we know biological warfare is a thing too. So like if you come in and you bomb people and you're like trying to control them and you want to do all these things, you also use chemical and biological warfare. Okay, so like that's one thing. Like look at the plague and Spanish flu. And like those are really easy things to solve. Typically you just need IV fluids, and your body's going to fight back, especially with the right kind of nutrition. And if you can self-sustain, like you just need a little solar panel to keep you going and a freaking garden and some fresh water, like that's not a lot to ask for. If people want to take care of themselves and take care of the land around them, why is that a problem? And then we can be trade partners, like we can teach each other what we know, especially about agriculture and also about like sewage and plumbing. And trash is an issue. We want to get rid of trash, so let's make fuel. In Africa